Hey nerds, we are talking about Strange New Worlds, Episode 5, Spock Amok. We are going to give our spoiler-free thoughts about the episode and then get into a full spoiler breakdown of the episode. Starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Nathan.
And I'm Kendra.
Hey, so if you are catching this on replay, you can look down below. We're going to have some chapter titles, so if you want to jump to the spoiler section, you can jump there now. All right, so the spoiler-free logline for this episode is, it's a comedy of manners when Spock has a personal visit in the middle of Spock and Captain Pike's crucial negotiation with an unusual alien species. So, Kendra, what did you think of this episode? Spoiler-free, of course.
Oh, it was a really fun episode. I think we got to see some of the characters break out of their sort of stereotypical behaviors and mannerisms. So it was a pretty lighthearted episode in the midst of some serious negotiations also happening. I enjoyed it, particularly like we're not used to seeing Vulcans be funny or amusing, and I think or being caught in very strange situations, and I think this was a good way to handle that. Yeah, fun, a little unexpected, I thought. So
Yeah, if you saw the trailer, that the term that they use often is hijinks. You don't see Vulcans in hijinks. So yes, there are definitely a lot of hijinks in the episode. Not just with Spock, other people are into hijinks as well, because this is one of Star Trek's shore leave episodes. Shore leave episodes tend to be more lighthearted fare. There's a bunch of them in Trek. I have a short list. There's 2 Days and 2 Nights from Enterprise, Shore Leave, the original one from TOS. Trouble with Tribbles was a shore leave episode as well from the original TOS. Captain's Holiday, which is when Picard goes to Risa for a little bit. And DS9, if you remember, the Worf goes to Risa in that one. So the shore leave episodes are usually pretty funny. So it was a cool episode. I mean, it didn't have a whole lot of depth to it, although the negotiations did have an interesting insight. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. It was a good episode. I appreciated the levity. I think this is the first time in a couple of years that we've had like a light episode for the new Trek series, unless you count all of the Lower Decks episodes, which are always funny. I think the last time we had like a light episode was maybe in season 1 of Discovery, when we had the Mud episode, when he was doing the time warp, the loop. That was the last like really light episode that wasn't like, didn't have any drama or like stakes or anything. So it was actually, this episode, it was a good wind down from last episode where everything was tense and the tension was building throughout every scene in the last episode. So I appreciated the episode. All right, it's difficult to talk about this without spoiling it. We're talking around it. I mentioned a bunch of things that you could reference, but really can't talk about the episode without talking about the episodes. What I should say is, if you are enjoying the conversation, comment down below to join the conversation. If you are catching this on replay, we are doing this live every week on Thursdays at 8:30 p.m. usually. A little late tonight, and we appreciate it if you like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the summer, so we can give you more content like this from diverse points of view. All right, with that, spoilers ahead. All right, what do you want to get into specifically in this episode? Like we said, there's a lot of random stuff going on. There's the Lahan and Una storyline, which is funny, and then there's the Spock storyline, which is what this episode is focus on it. And the name of this episode, Spock Amok, is a riff on the TOS episode Amok in Time, the TOS episode is Amok Time, which is the episode where Spock actually goes back to Vulcan, and that's the only episode that the Pring actually shows up in when they dissolve their marriage. It's interesting to see how things are going with them here, and it will be interesting to see how their relationship devolves, because it seems like they're both working on it here, but unless they're going to really break canon, it's going to fail, and we've talked about that at the beginning of the season as well. So we already see that they have challenges in their relationship, but it seems like they put a lot of work into trying to make it work. So I guess when it ultimately fails, you can't say that they didn't try. Yeah. We actually get an interesting like dream sequence at the beginning with Spock fighting himself, and his human side is fighting his Vulcan side. And this is very similar to the scene in Amok Time when he's fighting Kirk. T'Pring tricks him into fighting Kirk in that episode. So it's their wedding, or this is what their wedding would look like. This is a wedding ceremony, and she rejects him because he's a human. This is the first time I've ever thought about like Vulcans having bad dreams or paranoid dreams. So this whole sequence is just funny to me, and I guess this is an interesting, weird way to start the episode to sort of show you the tone of the episode. Although they are fighting to the death, and he does cut himself.
Yeah, he does. It does look pretty serious.
It does,
right?
yeah.
And then you realize.
But as he said, it's illogical. Like if you saw this in the preview last week or you saw it in the trailer, you assumed that it was either a dream or I don't know, he was doing like a holodeck simulation or something like that. But yeah, it was an interesting way to start the episode. And as with all the other episodes, we get the POV of him throughout this episode because he does his log, science officer's log at the beginning, which is cool. But even though you get his POV, I feel like it's split between him. Like the A plot, the B plot is Una and Lahan, and I guess the C plot is the negotiations. Maybe that gets the least time. I can't really tell. But they're all a little funny. The negotiations end with something that's pretty poignant.
Yeah, but it's also sort of where you see T'Pring coming to and understand what Starfleet means to Spock and what he does and how valued he is. So it's a subplot, but it's also part of the main.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. The Lahan and Una running around the ship, they never really interact with anyone else in those other plots except to bring the aliens to the captain, and they were like, I'm gonna go do some security things. And then you never really see her in the main plot again, because they're off doing their hijinks.
Yeah, it was nice to see the two of them sort of relax. So serious, so severe and so stern, and you see them actually like enjoying checking off the Enterprise bingo list and pushing it to the limit, breaking the rules in ways that other people haven't or couldn't. So yeah, it was.
I mean, seeing them relax was good, and apparently she's called
Where Fun Goes to
Die. That's what they call Una. It took them a long time to relax, though. They went through the entire lesson. It took them a while to actually figure out something that would be actual fun for them. Although it looked like they were having fun with in the turbo lifts when they were trying to.
At first, they didn't want to admit that being a little silly was fun.
Yeah.
It was like this resistance to, no, we got to be professional and Starfleet all the time. It's like, no, you can let loose. Nobody's on the ship. Nobody's going to see you. So yeah.
When I saw the preview for this, the trailer for this, I thought these cadets or these ensigns were like I thought these were children. I thought there was like some science. These are very short. Like Lahan herself, I think the actress is like 5'2", and these women look even shorter than her. At least that's how they're shooting them. Maybe they're shooting them from a different angle than they usually shoot her, because it makes her look a little bit taller. But I thought these were children. They're very small women. Yeah, that's when they learn about the bingo thing. So yeah, I didn't really get the medical transporter thing. They're playing around with the medical transporter, and apparently that brings the taste of gum back.
Now I think they must do something to reflavor the gum, because you can adjust it. Because with the transporters, they can do all like de-age people off.
Yes, the transporters are basically mortality machines, and they never actually touch on that again outside of that episode when they actually did it.
But I guess it makes sense. If you can filter things out, you could maybe add something from a previous transport, like a particular molecule, back in. That should be easy enough in theory, because if you're demolecularizing entire beings and remolecularizing, what's one molecule of whatever experiment tastes like spearmint?
Yeah, I guess so. I feel like that's a very trivial use of the teleporter.
It's like a very small difference, but you can taste it. Yeah.
It's a trivial use of the transporter, but also seems to be like something that you would have to do with precision as well. Just the data around the gum, but not the data around the person. You have to change. Exactly. You have to change
the risk. You don't want somebody tasting like spearmint.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if they're having fun here or they're just competitive. I feel like they're both competitive in the turbo. They're very competitive. Them shooting each other. She is a good shot. I don't know what the Lumet's hesitation was there, because they got framed up to shoot, and she said, wait, she got shot. So also in this episode, more hints of some of the things that we see in TOS. Nurse Chapel's infatuation with Spock deepens, partly because she was pulled into his hijinks of switching bodies with T'Pring. What did you think of both of their performances trying to act like each other when they swap bodies? Could you see the modulation?
Yeah, it was subtle, even in the way they held their hands, because T'Pring's hands are always clasped in front of her and Spock is behind. And I think even in her bearing, as straight as she is, as great as her posture is, she seemed a little bit more stiff in the scene that you're showing right here with Nurse Chapel. Everything just seemed a lot more articulated. So I thought they did a decent job. And you could see when the switch first happened and Pike is the first, because they quickly make the decision. They're like, no, we need to tell him what is going on, because you can't. T'Pring as Spock cannot go back into these negotiations, right? Because she doesn't know what the deal is. And you said,
although Chris makes the decision to put her in this situation.
Right, yeah. And I think T'Pring decides also, right, this is important to you, this is your job. And the purpose of the ritual that they were doing was to share each other's souls and learn more about each other. So they realize, in a sense, it's logical, right? It's ridiculous, but it's also, it makes sense. If we want to learn more about each other, then we should continue pretending to be each other for the rest of the day until we figure this out, type of deal, right?
Like they said, hijinks. So, right. Yeah, and she does get some insight into him, and he gets some insight into her. I feel like she gets a little bit better insight into him than he gets into her. I think mostly his swapping with her gives Nurse Chapel more time with him and more time to get infatuated with him. Although they do have a bit of a swapping of their jobs. I think in the interaction that he actually has with the fugitive, most of his reaction is about either the guy insulting Spock, or insulting Nurse Chapel. So yeah.
And he winds up dealing with it in a very
human way. Yeah. It's interesting to see T'Pring through Spock's mouth voice their concerns, and it's not their concerns, it's actually her concerns as well, about losing her culture and losing the allegiance to Starfleet. But yes, Chris's response here was a good response, and that's where she gets a little bit of insight into him, which I appreciated. That even in this mostly silly episode, they did have some poignant moments like this.
And then I think it brought back at the end because they're trying to get this new, I forget the name of the species, to join the Federation. But I also think it's timely when you're like talking about joining planetary, I guess in this case, or multinational organization, right. And that fear of a loss of culture or identity or your opinion being drowned out. I think we're sort of living in a time where, and I think Pike at the end pointed out, like there could be repercussions and blowback just by joining the Federation. Like now we promise to protect you, right, or come to your aid in a time of crisis, but the reality is that the crisis might come just because you decide to join.
The Golvian Protectorate is who they're negotiating with. And Pike exercising radical empathy, which is their whole deal, which is why it seemed like they were mirroring is what saves them here. So what did you think of the Doctor fishing it? What's going on with his daughter? What's
She's safe in the pattern buffer, right? There's nothing he could really do. And so it's nice to see him just relax. I'm curious as to where the other Doctor that he was supposed to be meeting was, because you never see that person.
Maybe that was cut out of the episode. Maybe they had more with him and then they cut it for time. Although it's a streaming service, so they could just put it in there. I'm not sure where they cut it, if there was something else there.
I think it's nice to just see them all of the crew just be a little bit down to earth, or I wouldn't even say silly. They have hobbies, they have interests outside of Starfleet. So just more insight into who they are as people. Right. His hat was wonderfully ridiculous. So.
I mean, that's what a fisherman's hat looks like. They have the tackle and stuff on it. Yeah, and this guy was a jerk to everyone. He insulted T'Pring technically because of her choices. He insulted her indirectly because of her choices. He insulted Spock directly, and he insulted all humans in Nurse Chapel as well. So he earned his punch. So I forget what he did. He did something on Kepler. I think he had something about an uprising, or he incited an uprising on Kepler 2b, is why they were chasing after him. Yeah, this explanation of how they get them back together is as silly as how they switched in the first place, but we'll just gloss over that. Because as soon as they switch bodies,
the urchin paste with crystals attached. Okay, the paste is for conductivity. Conducting what? Brainwaves? Who knows? Yeah.
Sea urchin paste. Whatever. But yeah, once they switch bodies in the first place, you have just to go with it. It's either too silly. I feel like there might be some split feelings about this. As soon as they switch bodies, it might turn people off, and they might be like, why am I now in the Freaky Friday movie?
I was like, oh, Freaky Friday, yep. But I feel like this is not unusual in Trek, people having their bodies being taken over by other entities. Yeah, so what's a switch, right? When we know Vulcans have the ability to get into other people's minds. So in that respect, it doesn't seem entirely far-fetched that you could have some sort of transference, right?
This is some new canon, though, because I guess they're stretching it a little bit, but I guess they could make make up things since they've already established a bunch of things. Like with Burnham, because Sarek used part of his Katra to save, like she has part of his soul, which is why they could talk over distances.
A mind meld across 1,000 light years.
More than a mind meld. Ever since you were a child, ever since the bombing at the learning center, that act of terror that forever changed her destiny. A part of me, my Katra, has been with you. It also allows us this unique form of connection.
So being able to swap bodies isn't that far off from being able to talk over light years and being able to share part of your soul. Yeah. As a matter of fact, this is not that far off because of what they showed in Star Trek 3. Because Spock dies at the end of Star Trek 2, right? The Wrath of Khan, because of the radiation. And he transfers his soul into the Doctor. So he was walking around with two souls, and he was able to transfer into a new body because his dead body was jettisoned into the planet that was being terraformed by the Genesis device. So I guess this isn't, doing that would be more complicated than what's happening here. You don't have two souls occupying the same body. So if you look at it that way, I guess this is fine. This is not as difficult or as far-fetched as that, and that was accepted by most people in Trek. So most people who love Trek, those are the really good movies. Actually, Wrath of Khan is like 40 years old this year. Yeah.
But maybe this is where Spock even got the idea, like from this experience.
Maybe.
He was like, hold up, wait a minute. I was able to, my soul went into T'Pring, so maybe I can make something happen. Yeah. Can I say, like, I hated that, hate is a strong word. I disliked that green uniform that Captain Kirk used to wear. That, like, you'd see it every so often because it just looked...
Yeah, that they put on Pike in this episode. Yeah.
But they updated it and made it, like, much more...
Yeah, it's nicer.
Leather.
It's definitely nice. I think it's still a captain's uniform, but I guess maybe it's like a relaxing, like a more relaxed captain's uniform, not an on-duty uniform.
I think that's what it was supposed to be. It always seemed a little less formal than his gold uniform.
But it's weird though, because he's in negotiations right now. So you think he'd have more of a dress uniform.
Yeah, you would think. But I guess they also started the negotiations unexpectedly. So I don't know if that was a part of it, because the Rogovians showed up like a day earlier, basically. So maybe he was just like, I guess we'll just run with it.
Yeah. So yeah, the end of this episode, the specifics of him specifically saying, as you said earlier, that joining the Federation is a risk for them because they have neighbors who are leaving them alone right now, but joining the Federation might be a provocation to them. So the fact that he was able to understand that they weren't just mimicking the person across the table, they were trying to be empathetic to the person across the table, was a good insight. Which I guess he understood because he was empathetic.
They seemed more like,
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say that he may have figured this out because they reacted positively to him empathizing with Spock, or who they thought Spock was. So yeah, it was like I said, in a silly episode, this was a nice touch about diplomacy and how to understand each other and how to maybe get to a solution, or how to get to a common ground by being empathetic to someone else's point of view, as opposed to just trying to play the angles of your self-interest. Yeah. I don't know. Did we miss anything? They, at the end of all decided to walk on the hull of the ship, which in an episode where people are switching bodies, I guess this is not the most crazy thing that happened in this episode, but they put up a force.
Because they had to do it in a way that nobody else had done before. So they create the force field, which I thought was cool. And the Scorch is also, I think, very cool. Like the one part of the ship that had never been replaced. Looks like a lot of people from the crew. So now I'm like, I want like little clips of how some of the crew members are playing Enterprise bingo, because where are you finding the time? Because the two ensigns that they caught, everyone's away on shore leave. And that's the moment they used to try, or they were trying to co-sign. They were also to take a little spacewalk. But like, when are other people?
Well, you gotta assume it's moments like this when they're in dock, right? Or they're like, no one's doing this between shifts, even if the Enterprise isn't at warp, because the Enterprise can go to warp at any time. So if you're out in an EV suit on the hull, you're gonna risk your life, because especially if you're trying to be covert about your actions, there's no way that you're gonna log that you're out in an AV suit. It's not like many people have done this over generations, apparently, or not at generations, but over years, because Robert April was the first captain of the ship. So over years, people have done this, And you got to imagine that if it wasn't something that Una knew, they are doing it in secret. So they got to pick moments like this when they're in space dock. That's the only safe and logical time to do it.
Yeah, but it's like now I want to see it because like you got to be sneaking around still to make sure nobody catches you.
Yeah.
So it's pretty funny. And this was a beautiful shot of the solar sails. Yeah, and I guess the only other time we've seen a ship like this was the one to go from Bajor to Cardassia.
That's right. We'll make a sailor out of you yet.
Although I guess in the first season of Picard, those flower ships are sort of like solar sails that the androids were using.
What kind of bogey?
Okay. I want to say like a giant flower.
Yeah. So Spock and T'Pring come to understanding at the end of this episode. But like I said, this is not going to last. So I guess it's just a countdown to how things are going to fall apart with them. And I think this episode ends with Nurse Chapel realizing that that might want to be committed to someone, and the person that she's thinking of is with someone else. Not just with someone else, is engaged to someone else. So that's a complication. Yeah. It also colors some of the interactions that we see them having later on in the series, in the TOS series. I think that's pretty much it for this episode. There wasn't a whole lot that there's a bunch of stuff, but it's mostly, like you said, the hijinks of them fooling around on the ship and the body swap stuff. And the Rogovian people. Anything else you want to add? Thoughts?
Yeah, I think we got it all.
It was a good episode. It was a fun episode. It was nothing too profound except for in a couple spots. Specifically, T'Pring getting to sit and hear that from the captain, and then the captain getting insight from that interaction about how to negotiate with the Rogovians. They still got some classic Trek, not necessarily moralizing, but messaging in there. All right, we want to hear what you guys think, so please comment down below to join the conversation and like and subscribe to get more content like this, and we will see you next week. All right, guys, thanks. Bye.